The past is never dead. It's not even the past. William Faulkner's words resonate, especially in relation to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, a work that transcends the horror genre. It's an unrelenting meditation on violence, complicity, and perhaps most importantly, the ghosts of history. Today, on this very special installment of Nightmare Masterclass, we'll delve into the many layers of Kubrick's masterpiece, unpacking its commentary on history, and in particular, colonialism. And maybe we'll do a little bit of chud dunking along the way, as a treat. Before we dive deeper into the haunting corridors of the Overlook Hotel, I'd like to take a moment to thank my Patreon supporters. I am very thankful for you all, especially those of you who stuck with me while I was recovering from my health situation this year. Anyway, to those of you who aren't signed up, if you find value in this analysis and want to support the channel, maybe consider supporting me. For as little as $1 a month, you'll gain access to exclusive content, including videos such as The Guru Trap, False Expectations and the Parasocial Dynamic, and The Inherent Ambiguity of Signs. That last one may be a little bit high concept, I know, but that's just me, baby. Your support not only helps keep this channel running, but also allows me to explore these complex topics in greater detail. So if that sounds up your alley, go to patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass. Now, what I'm about to present to you is certainly not a new take. Bill Blakemore was an ABC reporter. In 1987, his Washington Post essay argued that The Shining serves as a metaphor for the genocide of Native Americans. He cites a number of very telling subtextual clues that appear throughout the film, reinforcing Kubrick's critique of historical violence. Let's start with the Overlook itself. Its labyrinthian architecture defies logic, which is actually a fitting metaphor when we take into consideration all of history's unresolved traumas. Think about the hotel's origins. As we all know, the Overlook was built on a Native American burial ground. Stuart Ullman's offhanded reference to this fact mirrors how colonial violence is all too often treated as a footnote in mainstream narratives. And then there's the hotel's decor, Navajo patterns and totemic motifs, which lurk in the background. It's a haunting reminder of both the erasure and never-ending commodification of Indigenous culture. When Jack throws a tennis ball in the Colorado lounge, it strikes a decorative panel featuring a Native American figure. This subtle act of violence encapsulates the film's critique of how settler colonialism permeates even the most banal gestures of daily life. Blakemore argues that Kubrick used a number of recurring symbols to highlight this theme. The Calumet baking powder cans, prominently displayed with their logo of a Native American chief, represent the reduction of Indigenous identity to an artifact of American consumerism. These cans appear in the pantry where Jack finds himself trapped later in the film, suggesting that even as the past is commodified, its looming specter remains ever present, waiting to confront those who attempt to repress the horrors. And then, of course, there's the elevator of blood, which is easily The Shining's most iconic scene. In light of all the subtextual clues cited previously, it's not much of a leap in logic to conclude the scene evokes the inescapable legacy of violence against Native Americans. The bloodshed is both literal and symbolic. It's a visceral reminder of the atrocities that underpin the hotel's very existence and, by extension, our country's horrific foundations. Now, Jack Torrance's unraveling is central to The Shining's critique of complicity. Early on, Jack jokes, "White man's burden, Lloyd." This line isn't just a joke, it's obviously a nod to the pervasive settler colonialist ideology which rationalized both genocide and exploitation. Jack, a frustrated writer and father, is slowly but surely seduced by the Overlook's promise of belonging and power. In doing so, he becomes the embodiment of settler colonialism, a man willing to enact violence in order to achieve upward mobility. Jack's egoistic pursuit of being a famous author is his undoing. Jack's not penning the next great American novel. On the contrary, the hegemonic ideology of America has been written into him. The Overlook manipulates Jack through a relatively familiar tactic, appealing to his various insecurities and offering him a role in its rigid hierarchy. This mirrors how colonialism and fascism co-opt easily manipulated individuals, seducing them with promises of security and purpose while binding them to systems of horrific exploitation. Consider Jack's conversation with Delbert Grady, the former caretaker turned ghostly emissary of the Overlook. Grady tells Jack that he must correct his family, framing violence as both a duty and a necessity. This scene encapsulates how systems of power rationalize oppression, encouraging individuals to act as enforcers of their own subjugation. Jack is manipulated into harming his own family. The Overlook, then, isn't just a haunted hotel, it's a metaphor representing proto-fascistic power structures. It coerces Jack into submission, offering him the illusion of control while reducing him to a tool for perpetuating its violent legacy. Jack's obsession with all work and no play is more than a descent into madness. It embodies the dehumanizing repetition of systemic violence, where individuals become mere cogs in the machinery of oppression. This fixation calls to mind the Puritan work ethic, which valorizes relentless labor as moral virtue, thereby nullifying the worker's critical thinking abilities. And this motif further recalls the bureaucratic nature of genocides throughout history, where atrocities were carried out not by monsters, but by ordinary people performing mundane tasks in service of a larger system. This brings us to the present day. Consider the case of the translucently pale comedian Shane Gillis. You pay no attention to the fact that I am also pale. Interestingly, Gillis fancies himself something of a history boy, but being able to regurgitate a series of historical factoids does not make one a historian. How we contextualize historical events is every bit as important as the events themselves. But I digress. The point is, in a series of various podcasts over the years, Gillis has made numerous remarks that downplay the violence of colonialization by highlighting intertribal conflicts among indigenous tribes. It's the rhetorical equivalent of saying, well, they were fighting each other anyway, as if to excuse the broader atrocities committed by European settlers.
So they did.
So the whole town comes
What's the
out.
gauntlet?
Gauntlet is where the townspeople, mostly young men, line up 2 rows and make you run the gauntlet.
Oh, they're making.
And they hit you with sticks and fuck with you the whole way.
I thought they were. So you get caught by the Indians, they'd make you do a gauntlet.
Yeah, the Indians would make you run the gauntlet.
Do we have a gauntlet?
As a prisoner. No.
I mean, not we, but they're like, did fucking.
Yeah, did the good guys? Did the good guys have
Did
it?
the settlers have a fucking gauntlet?
No, I think they probably just
Killed you.
executed Indians, I'm sure.
So you had a.
And just Comanche, they didn't build cities. They were nomadic. They just went around, and if you somehow came into the middle of the country, you got fucked up. And not just like oh, you got, it was their rules to torture everybody to death. Like, the book tries to be like, well, they sang at night and they loved pranks, which was funny to be like, oh, they were dickheads when they were by themselves, which is really funny. But they were also the meanest.
Yeah.
Comanche were mean little dickheads.
Nasty.
Actually, it takes us to the Comanches quite a bit, and the indigenous
get
people.
There. Venetia wants us to get there quickly.
When people try to act like they were, like the revisionist history, like the quick history we have of Native Americans is that they were like one with nature and peaceful.
Right.
And it's actually borderline racist where you're taking away the agency of them. Like,
Right.
they were people.
Right.
They were shitty.
Right.
They were just as shitty.
Right.
You're being very, Eurocentric here. It's
Yeah.
evil through Western morality.
Right.
Through Plains morality. If you're fucking literally in the Stone Age.
This argument is not only intellectually dishonest, it's also profoundly reductive. While it is true that intertribal conflicts existed and certain tribes were particularly violent at times, Equating these localized disputes with the widespread systemic violence of European colonization minimizes the vast scale, organized intent, and devastating impact of these atrocities. One is a matter of isolated, fragmented skirmishes. The other signifies a coordinated genocidal campaign aimed at exterminating, enslaving, and displacing entire populations for economic and territorial gain. Gillis's remarks exemplify a broader cultural tendency to sanitize history by deflecting blame and minimizing the severity of colonial violence. This same mindset is employed to justify modern-day atrocities. This sanitized narrative provides a comforting illusion for those who prefer not to confront the uncomfortable truths of our past. However, as The Shining poignantly illustrates, ignoring the ghosts of history does not cause them to vanish. It only allows them to grow stronger and more insidious. This brings us to a crucial question. How do we break free from the cycles of violence and erasure embedded in our history? Jack was seduced by the Overlook's shallow promise of power and belonging. And sadly, he took the bait. If Jack represents complicity, then Danny is his foil, a figure of resistance and resilience. While Jack succumbs to the Overlook's whispers, allowing its sinister legacy to consume him, Danny takes a very different path. Danny's approach to the Overlook is careful, inquisitive, and ultimately defiant. He doesn't deny the horrors lurking in the halls. Instead, he confronts them, learning to navigate their dangers without succumbing to their pull. This makes Danny's arc more than a story of survival. It's a rejection of the fatalistic acceptance of historical cycles. His eventual escape from the hedge maze is symbolic, not just of his ingenuity, but also his refusal to repeat the mistakes of those who came before him. Danny's story reminds us that breaking free from systemic violence and oppression isn't just about survival. It's about refusing to internalize the logic of domination. While Jack embodies the allure of complicity, Danny challenges us to confront history on our own terms, to learn from its ghosts without being consumed by them. The film's haunting conclusion leaves us with more questions than answers. Jack's presence in the 1921 photo suggests that his fate was sealed long before he arrived at the Overlook. He becomes part of its legacy, trapped in an endless cycle of violence and erasure. In The Shining, Kubrick doesn't just tell a ghost story. He tells America's origin story. The film's message is clear. History doesn't just disappear. It haunts us. And its ideological baggage lingers even to this day, waiting to claim the next willing participant, whether it's a man seduced by a haunted hotel or a comedian that prefers comforting rationalizations over historical reality. The film forces us to confront the violence embedded in our very foundations, the complicity that sustains it, and the very real choices we now face in breaking free from its grip. Be careful, or you might find that you're the next caretaker at the Overlook Hotel. I'm Dave. This is Nightmare Masterclass. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me, again, you can go to patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass. And I'm just going to tip my hat, I guess. I don't know. How do I end this?